when I graduated from my psychology program with the highest honors and a lot of support and a lot of words and encouragement from professionals and from professors to tell me, whatever you want to do, you will be able to do it. You should look into this, you should look into this pathway. I said no. I said no to a very clear cut, very clearly defined, pretty well laid out pathway of becoming a psychologist, of becoming a professional therapist, um, of working also in institutions, being trained in institutions, because that did not feel truly, deeply satisfying and nourishing for my soul, bottom line. And there was a lot of information that I received in those, courses and studies of psychology, and that I really didn't resonate with either. Sometimes it really felt just like learning, learning, learning so that I can pass this test, so that I can keep my scholarship, because I was on a scholarship. That's how I was able to afford going to university. And then as soon as the test is over, it's like, how do I get that information out of my brain as fast as possible? Because I didn't want to be formed by that. I didn't want to work with people in that way that seemed very artificial to me, that seemed very isolating to me. Um, yeah, that seemed very like commercial and also pressing a lot of drugs, or even just kind of making it so that people can continue to kind of function in a very dysfunctional system, to keep being 9 to 5, keep going to work and keep being able to work. So here's how to manage your symptoms, and here's how to manage these, internal crises of depression and anxiety and deep longing, so that you can keep going to work. Well, that just doesn't cut it for me. And I'm willing to give up all of the security. I'm willing to give up the financial and the material gains and ease of access to all of those resources. I'm willing to work like seasonal jobs picking fruit if I have to, if it means that I can continue to form and develop myself and my service and my offering in a way that truly corresponds to what my heart and soul is speaking and longing for. And in that pathway, of course, I have had many beautiful encounters and teachers and mentors and blessings from life to give me some clues and hints as to what does set my heart on fire. So it's not only, the being alienated from what you don't like or what I didn't like about those systems and institutions. It was also like the juiciness and the passion that I felt when I started to discover some of the other pathways and systems of knowledge, um, and community healing and everything. I can get into all that later. Um, so it was both that gave me, the courage and the will to say, no, I'm going to create my own path. And I'm willing to give up security for the freedom to follow that path and to do what is really true for me. Because, guys, you are life. Like, you are so precious. Your attention and your energy is so precious, and you're absorbing information. So if you put yourself through a training, or you put yourself through a constricted pathway, you're allowing outside, authority or outside systems of information to basically form you and condition you. And, that requires high level of discernment. Of course, there's amazing teachers and mentors, but there's also a lot of ways that we can get into being conditioned and modeled and formed by these educational or institutional systems, which, whose interests is that really serving? Who is that really a long-term solution to creating viable and abundant systems of life, of caring for life, of providing viable means for, a fulfilled and healthy life for all of our children and our families? So, yeah, I was really lucky. I was really lucky because um, I had just like a couple really solid, amazing friends. One in particular who had and embodied such like a form of courage and radical self-trust and passion for life and, force of heart, force of love, that brought me a lot of tools and inspirations and resources, and also kind of just shared by osmosis some of that courage, of wanting to find new pathways, being willing to try new things that are not necessarily socially acceptable or mainstream, you know, ways of doing stuff. So that gave me a lot of safety, that gave me like the structure and the support that I needed to start exploring new pathways. And then I also got really lucky because in my last year, when I was about to graduate and I was thinking about what I want to do my final work on, my thesis, finally, now that I've been given this freedom to just research whatever I want to research, I got put into touch with an indigenous elder, an Iroquois man who had been living in Austria, in Germany, where I was studying for like 30 years. And he'd been living there and he still is living there with a work and a mission, which is the re-indigenization of the European peoples and helping people to come back, helping people to return to an authentic identity as belonging to a place, as having a heritage and a tradition and a cultural identity, of also returning to that form of communication with the living body of the earth, with nature, with each other, going beyond this like blocked Western mind and our hordes of concepts and names for things, to get into our bodies, to get into the other 99% of real communication that is represented by these beautiful bodies and emotions and micro expressions and vibration and frequency. Yeah, so I'm going a little bit on tangents here, obviously, because these are just things that inspire me. But what this elder gave me was he gave me one super simple tip or hint or clue, because I asked him, I said, this is what I'm studying. I'm about to write my thesis. I'm really interested in like the ceremonial arts for healing and how to kind of create containers for community healing. And, do you have any hints or ideas for me as what I can write that project on? And he said, go look at Indigenous Science. Go look that up and read what that means. And there's this one lady in specifically who's also from the same nation, the Six Nation Confederacy in the northeastern United States, who spent a lot of time putting together a very comprehensive presentation of Indigenous science and the principles of Indigenous science, and sharing this message and establishing this message, that there are different sciences, aka a way of coming to knowledge from the different cultures and the different territories of the earth, including the indigenous peoples. So Western science doesn't have like this monopoly or this monarchy over what is seen as true or valid, or, you know. So I dug really deep into that, and I loved it so much that I made it like the foundation of my whole final graduating work. Not in a sense of just like presenting Indigenous science, but in a sense of creating a therapeutic form with the intentions in mind of like community activation and community healing, and how to do that specifically for a place, and how to do that under the guidance of these Indigenous principles of coming to knowing. Um, and I'll get into those things in another video, I think, because it's super fascinating and super interesting, and it'll really blow your mind how it challenges some of these really deep assumptions of the way we think and the way that modern Western science is built up. But yeah, I was so inspired by then, you know, like probably at least 100 different thinkers and resources that I found after choosing that foundation and after building that foundation with Indigenous science. I found all these other branches of psychology that were actually very much in alignment with those principles of Indigenous science, which would be, for example, community psychology, how to build and strengthen natural networks and relationships between peoples as a source of resilience and healing and, you know, basic human social need that we have. And eco psychology is another great one that has kind of still quite a westerny way of framing things or conceptualizing things, but at its heart is actually also, you know, like getting people back into their bodies and getting people back into our senses and our connection to nature, not just as a hobby or not just as like a pleasurable thing that we do on the weekend, but as like a literal vital source of well-being and balance. That is how we're designed. Um, we're designed to be in relationship and communication and connection to nature, to the elements, to with the sun and the earth and water and living food. So that's another great one. Another one I found was narrative psychology. So that would be this science, art of storytelling. Again, when you start putting things into like the academic world and psychology, you start getting really sometimes kind of like some petrified concepts or conceptualized thinking of what that is. But a lot of these ideas are actually really ancient, really vital, and obvious means of communication and healing and all the good things in life from our ancestral cultures or from cultures on this earth to date who have managed to sustain their cultural identity and their heritage native to a place. So one of those things would be storytelling and the power of the word and the power of also like these archetypal mythologies that our lives are kind of expressed, and you know, how we can maybe take on that great journey, mysterious, uncertain journey of what it means to go into our unconscious depths and that ocean of memory. And you know, um, that would be a good boat, is actually the archetypal mythologies of these different places, and not just as, you know, the Western world again likes to think of them as kind of these interesting stories or representations of something, but actually as like living bodies. Like a true story or mythology is actually a living being, and it's something that nourishes life. It's something that cannot, it's protected because it cannot be conceptualized or boxed into a a petrified thought or a concept. It stays alive with this archetypal symbology and imagery because of the nature of its existence, which is oral, which is through being shared, which is, so that's very interesting. And also, beyond these archetypal mythologies, you just have the simple power of storytelling. Every person's got stories, everybody's got stories to tell. And some of those stories are so powerful and so intimate and have shaped us, and who we are. And it's big medicine to simply get people together and give them a space to share their story and to be witnessed by others. So storytelling and witnessing go hand in hand in that sense. Um, yeah, this is especially helpful in settings where you're working with grief because, you know, well, that's just another story for another day. Let's say that. What else did I get into in all of that research? I was basically hermiting. For 6 months when I wrote this work and when I was diving in my research to all of these different threads. And that was quite convenient because it was right when COVID struck and broke out. So everyone was supposed to be quarantining anyways. I just went into a hermitage to write my thesis and to present this final work. So, yeah, there's a lot of other things I can share with you with that. The bottom line is that what I found in that time, what I found through these means of, indigenous science or these other fringe branches of psychology, what has been named psychology, um, and in as well that process of deep introspection and development that I experienced through personal relationships and through this friend that I had, all of that, led me to being able to perceive what is it that really turns my heart on fire. These things are turning my heart on fire. Like I feel such a passion and an inspiration and like deep nourishment from these forms of community healing and from these forms of storytelling and all of these ways of creating beauty amongst people and just restoring the natural forms that would care for life and would have us caring for each other so much more than what I was being taught by, standard psychology or most of my professors. There were some good ones, amazing ones, but most of them it didn't feel nourishing. It felt really, yeah. So that's why I said no to kind of this security or this ease of the institutional path of psychology. I acknowledge that, there is not really ease and security, even in that pathway for a lot of people. Like I for sure 100% honor the struggle that some people have chosen in their pathway to go through all of those arduous means and institutional means and trainings and money and debt at times, most of the time, to arrive at a state where they can be considered a doctor, they can be considered with enough authority to actually bring some amazing, cool, creative forms of working with people into being. I love those people. I support them. I honor them. I'm learning with some of them even, but I don't want to make those same sacrifices when I've been afforded amazing opportunities and resources right now to cultivate and develop an offering that makes sense to my heart and corresponds to like what my soul came here to do, because that's what, for anybody, that's what makes us feel the most fulfilled, the most happy and joyful, is when we're actually feeling like we are fulfilling the function, of our most natural role or our most natural service, or some people like to call it purpose. Be careful with the names, I say, but do follow that deep inner source of inspiration, what really makes your heart on fire for life. What is it? If you don't know yet, ask yourself every day, what am I here to do? What is it that will set my heart on fire and give me really this passion to bring myself, to step up fully, to show up fully in life? What is it? I want it. And that's not a guarantee that the pathway is going to be easy, because it sure ain't been too easy for me either, y'all. It's been a struggle sometimes. It's been a real struggle sometimes. Like navigating, these demands of material security and trying to also find or create or hack through jungle pathways, or be able to communicate these things that are not mainstream, or that people are unfamiliar with, in a way that they can understand, in a way that they can get on board with, in a way that they can also feel inspired. So I hope that my story and my sharing today inspired you. If you've been feeling, like there's more possibilities out there than what you may have been told or led to believe, and if you needed that extra little bit of encouragement and inspiration to make a decision, to take a step into the unknown, to find that or to follow that passion of your soul, of your heart, then may this be what you need to make that step. And if you want to work with me or to learn more about where that pathway has taken me, because obviously the study did not end upon saying no to Western psychology. My pathway continued to open and develop in many, many ways. So, yeah, it's been a very interesting path. It's been a very, um, you know, it's been a bit wild too. And it's not been so easy all the time, but it's definitely been a deeply soul nourishing journey up to now. And I plan on continuing um, continuing to develop and refine and study all of these threads that I've mentioned and others that I have not mentioned, um, so as to live my best life. That's all I got to say, I guess. Um, all the blessings. I do offer coaching. I do offer private accompaniment and one-on-one support. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me and get in touch with me. See what I've got going on. So there is one more little story that I wanted to share and include as a part of this piece, and that is a story about really the magic that can and does happen when we follow that deeper source of inspiration, when we make clear decisions about what we want, and when we take that leap of faith. So at the end of my studies, I submitted this thesis, I submitted my final work, I received my diploma, and I was in a very special spot. So I just completed a 4-year cycle of studying, And I had this wide range of possibility open to me in that moment, right? And in that moment, I remember saying something very clearly and out loud to myself, and that was, I don't want to learn with any more books. No more books for a time, at least. I want to learn with my hands and my feet. That's what I said to myself. And literally 4 months later, through a series of very synchronistic events and encounters, I landed at a community in Colombia that was living and practicing all of the things, and I mean like all of the things to a T, that I had just been visioning and dreaming and idealizing in my solo hermitage research. And I mean, they were practicing these things, indigenous science, working with the elders, being in reciprocity with land, creating alternative education systems for the children, delivering rites of passage. Um, and they were doing it in such a way that was so precise and so skillful and heartful, so as to even blow my expectations and imaginations out of the water for what is possible. Um, and I'm still studying with them to date. It's been 3 years since I graduated. I've gone back to live with them. I've lived in a tent for various months on end on this in this mountain in the Andes, so as to be able to receive some of that wisdom and some of those tools. Um, yeah. So again, it hasn't been a path without sacrifice. It hasn't been an easy path, but it has been soulfully nourishing, and it just makes me feel excited about life and all the possibilities yet to come. So yeah, let's get to it.